Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to see you all, and welcome to our first 2024 session of the Ask the Expert series. We are very pleased to have some representatives from the Los Angeles Police Department and Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health with us today. As a reminder, this session is going to be recorded. Those of you who are comfortable turning on your cameras, I do encourage you to do so. This is going to be a relatively relaxed session where you can ask questions to the team after they wrap up their presentation, and really gives you the opportunity to learn more about case management at Los Angeles Police Department. So I'm going to turn it over to our folks to introduce themselves in just a moment, but I am going to once again thank everybody for staying on mute unless you are ready to ask a question, holding those questions until we wrap up our 20-minute presentation period. If you want to put questions in the chat, feel free to do so. Myself and my team will be monitoring that and making sure that those questions are answered by the team. This, as I mentioned, is a recorded session, and we are very pleased to be bringing the LAPD camp program to you all today for you to learn about. And of course, as with all of the CSG Ask the Expert series, we are very grateful for the support of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, who makes this work possible through their funding. So as people join, I do again ask you to turn on your camera if you are comfortable, but to remain on mute until you are ready to ask a question or to otherwise put that question in the chat. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our presenters today. We have with us from the Los Angeles Police Department, Detective Mike Morris, Dr. Scott Musgrove, and of course, Matt Barraza of LA County DMH. But I will let them all introduce themselves and give their presentation. I'm going to spotlight them just while they are doing that. And again, any questions that you have about the program, you can find that in the chat. If you're interested in signing up for one of our upcoming Ask the Expert series, please refer to the website in the chat. But with that, I will put myself on mute and ask our experts to take it away.
Hello, my name is Matthew Barraza. I'm the clinical supervisor of the camp unit. We are the case assessment management program, co-response follow-up unit with the Los Angeles Police Department.
Hi, I am Dr. Scott Musgrove. I'm a clinical psychologist with LA County Department of Mental Health. In our co-responder model, I am usually paired with an LAPD detective on various cases in the community.
And I'm Detective Michael Morris. I'm the assistant officer in charge of the case assessment management program. We like our acronyms here, as probably all of you guys do too. So we call ourselves CAMP. What we're going to do is I'll give you kind of a brief overview of what we're planning on doing. So our program is detectives paired with clinicians that go out and follow up on cases that our crisis teams have said that there's further follow-up needed. And so we'll go through the whole system, how these cases get to us. Then we're going to go over a case that we worked on recently, just to kind of show you how that works in action. And then we'll go through the case assessment part of it and how I review cases, how I look at cases, make sure they are complete. So without further ado, we'll get into that. So one of the key points for us is we have a database system that we use to put information on individuals, and we use a master record for each individual. After that, we then add incidents into that master record so that we could then follow up and kind of create a history of individuals. So one of the things that we've kind of followed is the Vitra model, which is the model out of Canada that Kevin Cameron produced for school violence cases. And this gives us a little bit of a history for each individual that we're coming in contact with, what each individual contact looked like, and then what we did if we did follow-up as a detective unit for each individual case. So that database is really, for us, key, because without that information, we wouldn't have the history, and it'll show in this case that we're looking at today how that history was important, even just in the case that we're doing on that we worked on last month. We have like a lot of you guys do, crisis response teams. So we pair officers with clinicians who go out to meet with our patrol officers, and they take over those cases for any 51, we call them 5150 calls, any mental health crisis calls that we have. That's just the code within our system for our authority to take individuals on, these crisis responses to the hospital. That is, again, an officer and a clinician. And so those officers and those clinicians are trained to identify cases that require additional follow-up. And really, it's a lot of intuition too, but there is a specific criteria that we give, and then they send us these cases electronically as well as a paper file, just so that we can follow up with. We'll get into a little bit more on our digital processes, on how we collect that data and how we really manipulate the data and use it. But these officers are all trained with our mental health intervention training. It's a 40-hour training that all of them have gone through, and most of our department, in fact, the head of our mental health training unit is here with us. She's off camera, but right now I think we've trained, 40% of the department through MHIT?
90.
Oh, 90%. 92%.
And now
See,
you have
92%.
and repeats coming through.
Correct.
So as officers are coming into the department, as they're going out into patrol, after a year, they come back and they get this training so that we can do the interventions here. So what happens is those crisis teams then send the cases to us once they meet our criteria, and then using that same database with the master records and the incident records, within that incident, we put what our follow-ups were. So any incident, any given individual, we could then go back on and say, here's what the interventions that we did, whether they worked or they didn't work. And so then we're not reinventing the wheel with each individual subject that we're coming in contact with. So with that being said, we'll go over a quick case that Dr. Musgrove and I worked on. And this actually is over the course of a couple of years, because he had an initial contact and then we had a secondary contact. So we used the data that we had from the first contact to inform our treatment and our intervention for the second contact.
Before you guys get into the case, I just want to address the mental health portion of our team. By no stretch of the imagination are the two databases married. So we do have a Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health database with clients with various contacts and clinics, from our civilian mobile response teams, different contacts. So we'll marry up the information when we're doing the triage of the referral. There's 4 million plus people here in LA City, so we do have a lot. We want to start with the right person. We want to make sure it's the right record. And so we can do a thorough risk assessment using the law enforcement database for violence, prior incarceration, arrests, not just convictions. And then with the mental health history, we can formulate whether we're going to take the case and what supports or interventions we can identify to assist that. So the mental evaluation unit LAPD database is separate from the Department of Mental Health database, and the mental evaluation unit database cannot be accessed by anybody outside and requires, there's a permission protocol for that. And obviously for our records, the patient must go through the legal requirements to get their records. So I just wanted to delineate that before they get into the case. We share information, obviously, relative to the case. It's a unique partnership. We've been around since 2005, and we're also happy that you guys are here, and I'll let them get into the case.
Do you want to talk just briefly about the referrals?
Referral process? Yeah, just to give everyone an idea that our referral criteria, again, big city, Los Angeles, we will get involved in cases that might include a person who's forcing fatal force to precipitate their own deaths, also known as suicide by cop. People that are high frequency utilizers of emergency, first responder, hospital resources. Anything involving bullying or school violence, obviously that also transfers to institutions, workplace, and then possible targeted violence events. We also take and we evaluate cases based on whether the person's a veteran, they might have PTSD, they might have problems accessing care in their network. We also would review cases that are critical incidents defined by usually like a barricaded suspect or somebody with a mental health crisis that won't come out of their place of advantage. Sometimes they could be on top of the roof, sometimes they could be cloistered in a closet. And this would require, a huge tactical response from our law enforcement partners. Our teams would do part of the crisis negotiation, or at least trying to get them out from there. So we would evaluate those cases. And finally, we would evaluate cases that involve, it could be high profile. So it could be somebody in the upper echelons of city, county, government organization, things that require special handling, stuff like that. That's a brief overview of our referrals. And the one they're going to talk about, obviously, is about targeted violence, correct?
Right.
I'll let them go.
Actually, before you do, so that does bring up a good point. So just how that looks logistically, so that the teams that are trained, the crisis teams, they know what our criteria is, and they send us all these referrals, but not all of our referrals are sent to a team. So Matthew and I will sit down and look at all these cases and decide whether we can actually add any kind of value, whether connection to mental health resources would be beneficial in any given case. And so sometimes they already are connected. And so it's a matter of really just contacting their current treatment team. So we have various levels that we give. It's not levels of severity, it's just how we are assigning cases. So our level 1 is a detective plus a clinician. So there might be something legal and there might be something with the mental health. Level 2, we would have just detectives assigned. And so those would look like if an individual is prohibited for mental health reasons from owning firearms in California, well, then our detective will go out and ensure that those firearms are collected and made safe. And then a level 3, where it's just a clinician. So that would look like they have a treatment team already, and it's just a matter of our clinician calling the current team and saying, here's what they have, and here's what happened with this latest crisis, and best to treat that within our current treatment setting.
So just to be clear about what our mission here at camp is, our mission is to connect certain clients to services or reconnect them to existing services, or in some instances, return them to their home of origin if they're from out of state. But overall, our overarching mission is to be non-punitive. The goal is to get people back to the level of care that is going to help them function in the world more appropriately and more helpfully. And thereby, the benefit for LA City and LA County in the big picture is to reduce the amount of hospitalizations, especially amongst our high utilizers that are sometimes on a merry-go-round with law enforcement. They're in and out of the hospital, which, if we take it from sort of a clinical perspective to a financial perspective, that costs the city and the county a great deal of money for people not to be connected to services, but be utilizing emergency hospitalization as their coping mechanism, or if that's all that's available for law enforcement. So as my supervisor, Mr. Barraza, was saying, we do get a number throughout the year in waves. We get a number of referrals from schools. We do see a pattern about referrals coming at times during exams, right after holidays, right before holidays. So we see sort of an up and down throughout the school year. I received a referral in 2021. So this is a case that was referred several years ago and actually has reemerged. And that also adds something to the description of what we do here at camp, is that our cases actually never close. We may deactivate them, but if there's another incident that meets a referral criteria, it becomes active again and comes back to the clinician and the detective that we're handling it. Excuse me, handling it. So for purposes of this, if there are any mental health clinicians of concern in the audience today, please know that everything has been de-identified for confidentiality purposes. I've switched up a lot of things so that this individual cannot be identified. Ty Hartunian was referred to us in 2021 after an incident with his mother. He was enrolled at a private religious school, very high-end religious school here in the LA area, and he had sent a threatening email to his mother. His mother was quite reluctant to work with law enforcement. She was very evasive with the information that she provided. She would not let law enforcement and a clinical team into her home for an evaluation, but she did eventually agree, after some back and forth with the emergency clinician on site, to transport her son to the hospital itself for an evaluation. He was taken to a hospital that is not in our county system. We've now developed a better relationship with that entity than we had at the time that this incident occurred. But the hospital psychiatrist that was on duty at that time also found that the client did not meet criteria for hospitalization. So a 5150, we were hoping, or a 5585 for a minor, that's our welfare and institutions code for a 72-hour hold. That was discharged by the psychiatrist at the hospital. The client was returned home, and the referral was made to us to see if we could add any value to this minor's treatment. I was deployed to the home with my detective partner at the time, and we were able to stand at the door and speak with mom and explain our purpose. So we were, first and foremost, we're saying nobody's in trouble right now. Our goal is to help you access the services that you need, and so that your son can get the treatment that he needs or the evaluation that he needs. Mom was still very reluctant. So at this point, my partner and I have to find a way to create what we call a therapeutic alliance. As those of us in mental health do, we have to find a bridge, a way of communicating so that we can get this parent to cooperate with us. Weirdly enough, this parent happened to be a former child star. This was somebody here out in Hollywood. There's a lot of people around here who were formerly in entertainment. I had 20 years in that business, and I was able to meet with her on that level and talk to her about some commonalities. And then once she realized that we weren't there to get her son in trouble, we weren't there to arrest him, we weren't there to immediately hospitalize him, but to potentially offer him and her some support, she was more willing to come out and talk to us and give us more of a mental health history. Ironically, what she revealed to us was two things. One of which is that her son had no formal diagnosis, but had been having significant behavioral issues for almost a decade, and they had been increasing and lashing out in anger. And she was usually the recipient of most of the anger. He was absolutely, positively addicted to his video games. He was not allowed to play video games, but an older stepbrother had allowed him access to electronics. Mom was trying to be very strict about the electronics, but that slipped under the rug. The other point is that, sort of is the foundation of the irony, is that mom is employed as a very successful parent coach here in Los Angeles. So very successful, very well regarded, but really facing a big challenge in utilizing her education, her training, and her resources to apply it to her own home life. What we were able to do was work with mom, and we actually had no client contact, which sometimes is appropriate because we don't want to throw fuel on the fire if it's not necessary. but we were able to coordinate speaking with mom, speaking with the minor's male mentor that had been brought in to help. We spoke and consulted with the rabbi and then the administrators at the school. What we did was we were able to get the minor into some services that were provided by the school, engage in sort of an agreement of what would happen if he was allowed to come back to the school. Unfortunately, the client was not cooperative with this. So what was made available through the church was allowing him to go to a faith-based school in another country for a year. That was quite successful. He came back. There was an enormous shift in behavioral change. And mom reported, as I followed up over the next 6 months, that he was doing a lot better. But she remained evasive about whether or not he had actually ever gotten a diagnosis or whether or not he was agreeing to be in treatment. She's very, very superficially cooperative, but a very pleasant woman. Unfortunately, that presents a challenge for me, because if I'm trying to use any of our very well researched methods of assessing for threat, there's no way for me to get all of the information. I'm trying to, as Mr. Barraza was referring to, or Mike Morris, we were trying to utilize Kevin Cameron's VITRA model, which is the violence threat response assessment. And we're always looking at what point does this individual become a danger to others? At what point does this individual actually have a plan and a means to follow through? And then what are the mitigating factors? Is there a high level of hopelessness, a high level of helplessness? Is there fluidity between homicidality and suicidality? And what we were relieved to see is that at that time, it had not reached this point. So the case goes to sleep basically for, 3 years. And then it pops up again, almost for the exact same reason, that he was not allowed to play Call of Duty all day, all night. And he had been shifted. He had come back to LA. He was not allowed to go into any of the religious schools because they had all talked to each other, so they would not let him in. He goes back into our unified school district, a very good, strong system we have out here in LA. But unfortunately, he was having some interpersonal problems at school. He was not able to integrate with the school body at his age. He was not able to form any friendships. And he was seen as an overachiever that was not able to take feedback. This resulted in some very strong suicidal ideations and even increased violence against his mother, which again resulted in another referral to camp.
So now we have the history of this individual, so we can go back and look at this incident. We know what Dr. Musgrove and his partner did. So now we know that we have connections at his old school. So we know as this came out, it was actually what happened was he's in a mentorship program now. It's a faith-based mentorship program. And so now we know we have a mentor that we can work with as well. So and then we have the LAUSD has their own threat assessment team. So we have great working relationships with them as well. So now we have all these points of contact that we can call in. So immediately we go down to the religious school. We talk with the rabbis again. We find out that they actually have a line into his current therapist. So they're on the phone with his therapist saying, here's what's going on. So now the therapist knows what's happening. And so we go down to the mentorship program and we get the further information from them. Initially, the reason why I came in that second time is because he's saying he wants to go out and get a gun now that he's turned 18. Well, in California, that's not something that you can do. He doesn't understand that. But we now have a mentor who is able to put some pressure on him and kind of press him on what is the plan? What are you going to get for guns? And we can have that mentor without our intervention at this point, because we already did it that first time, kind of gather some more information for us as well. And so we're able to get some further information from the mentor. And then through LAUSD, he happens to be on the baseball team. He's actually a baseball player. So his school counselor is one of the baseball coaches. So now that coach calls him in and says, hey, what are your plans for the future, under the guise of his just normal college planning and all that stuff. So now we know that he actually has a plan for going to college, and he has some backup plans for going to some potential community colleges as well. From his mentor, we know that he wants to get a gun, but his sense from the mentor is that he's more provocative than anything. He's just throwing these ideas out. When we really press him on him, he doesn't have any real plans to get a gun. He doesn't have a way to get it. Doesn't have any means to get it. So he's able to kind of work through that with his mentor, because he's within a faith that's a very strong faith, that within that context they're able to discuss things about relationships between men and women, and guns, and all of these things that the people have to confront. So but he's able to do that. And we didn't mention in the thing too, his father actually passed away, and that was one of the stressors for him. So the mentor now is a father figure to him, so we actually have a line into them. So that's great. And then the rabbis, they don't have any contact with them, but that community is very strong, and so they are able to connect us with all of the people that are treating him. So now we have all of this background information, and we have all of these people that are touching him through very direct connections that we can now influence and kind of give information and kind of feed information throughout this whole system.
So one of the things that's really important that we as clinicians can add as value to a situation like this is that we can look at a bigger picture through a threat assessment model as well as a clinical and diagnostic model. And this is something that will happen, that I will engage with my supervisor or my partner on the case, and we will go back and forth. And sometimes we will agree, sometimes we have to have a discussion, and we have to make our points. I have a lot of red flags going off for me right now with this particular client. He has experienced loss, which is traumatic. I don't know if there's an active diagnosis, and I don't want to put a label on somebody if it is something that is trauma informed versus an actual biological drive that is happening here. But what I do want to make sure is that I'm looking at, is there actual real homicidality going on? Is there real actual suicidality going on? Yes, he has a plan to go to college, but what if he doesn't get back acceptance letters? What kind of impact is that going to have on him? I had a very frank discussion with his mom. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, trained in forensics, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I have a lot of expansive training in family therapy. So I had very frank discussions with her about, you're an expert in this area. How are you drawing boundaries at home? And that was how we found out that mom really has a lot of challenges in pushing back against a replay of the violence that her son witnessed by his deceased father against his mother. So I know that's kind of complex, but that is something that we do here in our program, is that we're transitional case managers, but we are actually doing diagnoses, we're doing therapeutic connections, and we're giving also therapeutic directives when it's necessary. And that benefits the community and the individual simultaneously, as well as getting us more fodder for conversation about, is this individual a danger now? And do they have potential to be a danger in the future?
So one of the things that I failed to mention too is that his father owned firearms too. So during that first incident, it just so happened that one of our officers was a next door neighbor, and he's within the same religious community. And so he actually was asked by the subject's mother to take all the firearms. So now I know where the guns are at, and I know, I've had discussions with our officer. So if she does in fact want to get those guns back, well, now we know that we have a line into exactly where they're at. And so there's some times that we can do things. We have red flag laws here in California, our gun violence restraining order. It's not something that we could do in this case, but we have, we called our city attorney who deals specifically with gun violence restraining orders to make sure that we couldn't get in this case, and she couldn't. So, I mean, there's times that we can do legal things. There's some times that we cannot. Now we've made some connections and we've identified some issues, but it's a matter of like, how do we address them? And this is just kind of a discussion that we have going on, and I know that we're kind of going on with this case, but it's continuing and it's still, evolving. So a case like this, we would put our notes into our case, and then once it's now complete or inactive, then they would put it on my desk and I would review it for completeness so that we then close the case. And our files are all digital, so that's how we keep our data. So if he pops up again, he knows what Dr. Musgrove and I have done, what Dr. Musgrove and his previous partner have done, and it informs the next incident. So I think that's it for our part of it. If there's any questions, we could certainly answer any questions.
We have more detail if anybody's interested in specifics. I just wanted to stay within this time frame, but feel free to ask us whatever you have.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, gentlemen. Really nice to hear you walk us through that case example and, that overview of what camp is doing. So I am going to turn it over to our audience now. Folks, feel free to take yourself off of mute, ask a question. If you'd like to utilize the raise hand feature, you are absolutely welcome to. But if you're ready to ask a question, you can take yourself off mute, ask that question, or put it in the chat. I will sit back and see what comes in.
One quick thing too, we actually are a learning site too. So a lot of people come to our location to learn about our program. And there are a lot of, we're flush with people because we've got, 9,000 people and following on our department. But it's totally scalable because if you have a team that is a crisis response team, well, whatever time they have as a downtime can be done with follow-up. So if it's even just one team, that would be fine. So that's kind of what we talked about, but it's key to have that database, which we can always draw information from.
Absolutely. And yes, great point, Mike. I put it in the chat earlier, folks. Los Angeles is one of our law enforcement mental health learning sites. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can read up on them online or reach out to them directly to talk further about this after this event. Gentlemen, I do have a couple questions in the chat for you. So the first one is, are the profiles that detectives keep on people who are referred to the program kept in the same database or CAD system that patrol officers use, or is the data stored on a different system that's only available to detectives and mental health professionals?
It's a database that we keep specifically for our officers and detectives. So we're actually slowly, I know we were mandated in January of 2021 to go digital. We are now February of 2024. We're finally going digital. And so there's discussions about even our database like that. We'd never commingle that information. Even if they require us to move it onto the digital database, then we'd have to bifurcate it. There's just no way that we could keep that data and let it have general access. There's just no way.
Great. And that question was from Rick Larisi. Rick, does that answer your question? Any follow-up there?
Do you want to talk about special locations?
Oh, yeah, that could be.
Okay. I don't think Rick is coming off mute, but another question in the chat for you. Would you be able to share job descriptions or the qualifications that you're looking for in clinicians? Are there specific credentials that teams should be looking for, additional trainings, things like that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Good question. I supervise a team of approximately 7. We vacillate with turnover. We have in the Los Angeles County Department of Health on our clinical staff, we have mental health counselor RNs, we have clinical psychologists, we have LMFTs, which are also known as mental health clinicians. And then we have social workers, psychiatric social workers, or licensed clinical social workers. That's the core of our clinical team. It is desired that they have field experience in the co-response model. Usually the people we have on the team have come from the co-response model. I myself came from, I worked at the LAPD SMART team for in excess of about 14 years before I came to the case assessment management program. We also have training in the violence threat risk assessment, involvement in the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. That's a national organization that also offers additional certification and trainings for threat assessment. All those are desirable qualifications. And we do ongoing training as part of clinical development. And like Dr. Musgrove was talking, we always use each other as soundboards for consultation for what worked, what program for this specific person with these specific needs. What's your contact at the agency that is not mental health? It might be what we call here the regional center, a person with intellectual disabilities that's also diagnosed with mental illness, who also may be using drugs and alcohol. We've got a couple of those in our caseload. So a well-rounded clinician with a variety of experience, especially in crisis work, is usually a good solid foundation for the people we have on our team.
And then just to define to the backronym that he was mentioning, we love those. SMART is our crisis response team. So that's all it is. It's our crisis response team, and then CAMP. We didn't name them, but that's our detective response team.
But and following up what Matthew was saying, so we have those different disciplines for clinicians. MFTs, social workers, and psychologists have a little bit more of a straight trajectory into us. If anyone's interested in working in emergency response or forensics, there's on-the-job training for these positions. It's not for everybody, particularly in SMART. SMART is almost a 24-hour schedule. So, and you're working, you are boots on the ground in the field, and it's very exciting. It's very challenging. People I've talked to that have worked in SMART say that was the most challenging thing they ever did and the most fulfilling, that they've really enjoyed it. So we have people coming here from the prisons. We have people coming here from the jail, clinicians, not clinicians that were in jail or prison, but worked in those facilities that then came and worked with us. RNs are a little bit different. RNs within the state, within LA County, in order to do emergency field work, have to have that. I mean, they're required to have a really high level of experience. Like they're required to be on duty in a residential psych facility, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, for several years. But yeah, we open to all disciplines. When we've spoken on this program across the country, we've encouraged even small towns. If you're a small town law enforcement agency and you don't have anything like this, but you're interested in trying to start it up, then reach out to the local university's psychology department at the master's or the doctoral level. Go out and create your own program with the resources that you have in your community.
Some of our smaller agencies out in like the beach cities where we're at share clinicians, and they share teams, and they're different days. So it's totally scalable. So
thanks so much, guys. Tenny, does that help answer your question? Any follow-up from you on training and qualifications for the clinical partners?
It does. It was very helpful. I just want to you said the Association for Threat Assessment.
ATAP Worldwide is your web address for the website. atapworldwide.org.
It's a great resource, and we're always. That is one thing that our program manager, our current program manager, and all of our program managers have always emphasized is, we have to keep our skills are extinguishable. So we really do have to stay on whatever is the most recent cutting edge research regarding violence and risk and threat assessment. So we're in training constantly. There's not a week that goes by that there's not something that pops up that we're able to take virtually to enhance our skills here.
Perfect.
Yeah, for instance, we ran across Doc Musgrove and I ran across an incel, which that was a few years back when that was
when it was not a known term.
Yeah, so we kind of got a chance to see that firsthand with somebody who was potentially, well, I think he was an incel, but I don't know if you guys know that term. It's an involuntary celibate. So generally males who believe that they are held down by society, and it's a whole online community, and it's terrifying if you go into.
Yeah, that was very helpful. It's just we're a small city, Paterson, New Jersey, and we're looking to start our co-response program. We may only start though with one clinician that we will be hiring through the hospital. So just kind of like any extra like qualifications or um uh uh trainings that I should be looking for. That was important to hear because I know we have a huge population where some of this is like drug induced, I guess
Yeah.
psychosis and things like that, or maybe mental health. It's just, we have a melting pot of communities. So, they need to be kind of sensitive to like that. So I just that was helpful. So I'll check out ATOP worldwide, but that was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And there's another question in the chat, but since I know the person who asked, I am going to call on them. She's laughing already. Jenna Savage from Boston, if you don't mind asking your question, we'd love to hear from you.
No, good deed. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, so I'm from Boston Police Department. A few of us are on this call. We are looking forward to possibly planning a site visit out there. And we're very interested in the case management part of this. So you will be probably seeing our faces sometime soon in person. Hi, Ernie. The question is, so we have a street outreach unit. Again, a few of them are on this call, but currently they are comprised solely of officers, not of detectives. And I'm just curious, how important is it? Because we have long talked about the importance of maybe getting detectives into their unit to do this kind of work. But I'm just curious in terms of competency and skills and capabilities, is it more just that officers don't have the time and capacity to do follow-up, and so you need the specialized team of detectives and or clinicians to do the follow-ups, or is there something that detectives can do above and beyond what officers, and I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I'm just trying to understand like what is it about this role that, why detectives?
So for us, the reason why we use detectives, it's a mindset of not just like, hey, we're done with this call. Oh, for us, it's officer completed call and we're done. So we didn't want that mindset. And then also too, we do a lot of search warrants. Like our guy, like the rest of my team is out on a search warrant right now because there's a guy that has a gun that is prohibited. So if an officer can do that, then, and a lot of officers can, then that would be fine. And as long as they have the mindset of, well, we're not just closing this thing, we're done. You have to be able to kind of look at it as long term, then that would be fine too. And so for us, I guess it's the mindset. Yeah, and there's a skill set, but a lot of officers in smaller departments and smaller areas have that because you have to have that. So I would say just people who are more longer term thinking and are able to do things like, again, like the warrants or present a case to a district attorney, and that's the kind of stuff that we do. So we didn't bring it up here, but if there's a criminal aspect to a case, well, then we'll put together a follow-up report and we'll redact all of the HIPAA related information, and we'll put all of the information that shows individuals running in traffic and was saying that he was God and he was all of this kind of stuff, incident one, and then list all the 10 most recent incidents to show the district attorney and the public defender, like this is not the kind of person that we need to have go directly through the criminal court system if we can help it. Now there's some great cases that are very clearly very violent, and well, that's different.
I mean, just to expand on that, we have an extensive system out here that really is, when it works, it's amazing how it works. And another aspect of what we do is we do a lot of court advocacy, where Mike and I will go on a case to the court that's like 2 blocks away. Mike will talk to the DA. I'll talk to the defense attorney. We'll say, look, the driving force behind this incident that got this person in front of the judge is a mental health issue. And can we go for a diversion program? Can we put them in a residential treatment? Or can we, will you put them on probation with required treatment so that they have to come back every 90 days and report back to the judge? And we have a lot of success with that. But that's also sort of a forward-looking lens that not every community has. And I'm going to be fully transparent, we have problems in that system as well. But we also have really, really great successes.
Right, and it depends on the crime too. I mean, if it's a severe crime, well, we're not
going to do that,
Yeah,
right? We're not going to. There's a line where we're going. It does, even if it was mentally health driven. We had a case recently where an individual, in the midst of an episode, pushed another person in front of a moving train. That's not something that level of mental illness and the impulsivity towards violence requires a higher level of addressing than we are able to. So we would stay out of that process, and the jail would likely move towards either a conservatorship or to be remanded to a mental health facility within a state prison system.
So helpful. And thank you. And while I have you, I'm going to ask one other question just because I can. Does your unit also get involved with follow-ups to, we call them Section 12s here in Massachusetts, but involuntary hospitalizations, when someone needs to be possibly taken in for an involuntary psych evaluation and the police get involved? Does your unit do follow-ups kind of routinely to those, since they're already kind of by definition relatively, like, I guess, is there any relation to those with camp?
So that's where we have to try and meet our criteria, because that would be like drinking from a fire hose. There's so many, we call them 50 on 50s, right? So we have so many of them every day. There's just no way we could follow up with all of them. It'd be none. And a lot of our people live and walk and don't walk. So I don't know, like, I don't know where that's at. Like, it's every corner. So yeah, we have to kind of pick and choose. And so that's what Matthew and I do. So the way that we kind of control the spigot and try to manage our effectiveness is to create a list of things that we want to follow up on. And then as those cases come into us, then we can kind of sit down and really kind of dig into it and say, can we add value? And if so, how do we tackle this so that we can kind of manage it?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch about a site visit.
Cool.
Absolutely. I see a chat from Jose Estrada. Jose, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to this nice, cool event. I'm Sergeant Jose Estrada with the Chicago Police Department. We have a supervised crisis intervention team here, and just like I think every crisis intervention team nationwide sort of face our particular challenges. A couple questions. As far as the MHIT training, did ask whether it was mandatory or voluntary, and just found out it's mandatory, and was wondering why you guys went with that process as opposed to getting volunteers for this sort of work.
So I'm going to turn that over to our
Take it over, Liz.
sorry, I'm the supervisor.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Detective Elizabeth Reyes, and I oversee the mental evaluation, the training unit, the in-service training. And the reason why it is mandatory is because, the chief of police mandated that it be mandatory, and it also starts with our our recruit officers. They are mandated to come back as an extension of their academy training during their 11th month out in the field. And so the idea behind that is that they're getting this training early in their careers so that they're able to better serve the community and identify the signs and symptoms of mental illness, rather than waiting for an officer to go throughout their career, and then when they want to volunteer for the training, that's when they receive it. So in a sense, more of the department is getting this training early on. And also in California, Senate Bill 29 requires that all field training officers receive either 8 hours of crisis intervention training every 24 months, or take the 40-hour crisis intervention training. So MHIT does satisfy that state requirement. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. And have a follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
With this training being provided earlier in an officer's career, have you seen any change in officer attitude towards the training, like less cynicism, more acceptance? I mean, just curious about that.
Absolutely. And I think Dr. Musgrove, who actively participates as one of our instructors, can also attest to that. But yes, officers' attitudes towards mental illness, the empathy component of the training does make a huge difference. And also, I'd like to also say that part of that MHIT training does cover officer wellness. And in our experience, and Dr. Musgrove and I have discussed this numerous times, that the culture, the law enforcement culture that we're seeing with the newer officers, kind of sharing their personal experiences on how mental illness has affected them or their family, is just a complete cultural shift than what I have 22 years on the job, something that we would never talk openly about in a classroom with our peers, is something that with our newer officers, they're very open to sharing. And so I think that brings humanity also to the class, which helps with the empathy piece of the training.
I mean, there's also on a really practical level is that this had to happen in our metropolitan area in order to de-escalate and reduce the risk of death to mentally ill individuals in the community. We had to get to the point where we're teaching a higher level of skills. Well, how do you reach people that are of old school law enforcement culture? And one of the things that I share when I teach my lecture portion of these presentations is when I started doing this 8 years ago, our room was full of old timers that sat in the back with their arms crossed, and not a single one of them knew anybody that had ever attempted or committed suicide. No one had any connection or nexus to mental illness. No one had any loss. I'm fine. The armor was really up. And what you would see through the end of that week, that 40 hours of training, after they had met mothers of individuals who had died as a result of their mental health episodes, or people coming from the Autism Society, is like you saw a shift in the perspective. And what's really interesting is that 8 years forward now, we don't even have to wait until halfway through the week. You see it at the beginning. This younger generation, their hands are in the air. After we've shared, after Liz has shared, there's like, yeah, my sister has schizophrenia. It's been an incredible challenge for our family since I was 6 years old. Or yes, my grandmother has dementia, and it's really put a financial strain on us because now we're a 3-generation family with someone who's otherly abled, and it's put a stress. So you just see this shift that's really, really having an impact on how they're able to interact in the community with the mentally ill and make decisions on the spot of, is this something that requires this level of care or this level of intervention? It's remarkable, and it's remarkable. People come away changed at the end of the week.
Thank you. Appreciate that insight. And just like Jenna did, I'm going to follow up. Just because I have the floor, I'm going to follow up with some additional questions, if I might. So another question I had: you mentioned this criteria that you use to identify cases. Are these cases for camp, or these cases for SMART, and if you wouldn't mind sharing the specifics, can you share the specifics of the criteria that you use to identify these cases for more intensive follow-up?
Yes, so that's specifically for camp, so that's for us to follow up on. And then for our crisis response team, the SMART team, they go out on every mental health call if they can. So if they even go to radio calls direct. So the patrol unit would handle it as best they can. Once the scene is stabilized, then the SMART unit would generally then take over and would take the body from them if it's a mental health crisis and take them to the hospital, so it frees up patrol. So for us, yes, that's specifically for camp and for further follow-up. And that's what I was talking about, is there's so many of those going on here in Los Angeles. We have to kind of reduce the number of calls and kind of target where we're going to be spending our time at.
He's asking about the criteria.
Oh, that is the criteria. And that's what Matthew was talking about. It's suicide by cop. It's high risk, which is a catch-all for, hey, this guy needs to be followed up on. It's school violence. It's all of that stuff. So there's specific criteria that we have. Unfortunately, I don't have it on me right now. But
We can share
Yeah.
it.
yeah, we could share it. We could put it up on there.
But we're also we have 5 or 6 categories that are sort of our specific catch-alls for referrals. And then we have an other box, and that other box can also include what we call VIP referrals. Like if it's something that is regarding like a threat to a city council member, you know, and then it's referred to us so that the detective and the clinician can look through the history and see if there's any real threat in that sense. So we have specific criteria, but we also are very flexible about taking on cases as well.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then one last question. What's your operational staffing look like right now for the SMART program and for camp? How many officers, detectives do you have, psychologists, clinicians do you have in each respective program?
Now you.
All right, currently what I have.
This is our program manager.
Hi, my name is Bach Lou. So I'm the program manager for SMART and Camp. So currently we're operating, we're budgeted for 32 clinicians. We have sitting at 32, and we just got permission to expand the program to 40 clinicians. Like any program right now, we have hiring issues. So we have monthly job fairs. It's just very difficult to convince clinicians to come out and work in the field when telehealth is a big enticement right now.
And then we have 90 officers for SMART. And then for us, we have 6 detectives. And how many clinicians we have right now? 6?
6 to 7.
Yeah, 6
Camp.
or 7, yeah, in camp.
And then we have 5 clinical supervisors. We're going to expand to 6 clinical supervisors for SMART. And we have 1 for camp.
But again, we're going through the same issues that you probably are too with staffing. So we're going to be down to 5 detectives shortly with a retirement.
So all in all, if you're going to add up all the admin support, clinical staff, and supervisors, we're running about 50 staff for Department of Mental Health. And then LEP.
Yeah, we have 90 officers. I forget how many sergeants we have.
25.
Oh, 25. There you go. 25. I don't work SMART, so.
So it's a big crew.
Thank you. Really appreciate the insight and you taking the time to provide this for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
And while we're on the subject of staffing, Amber had a question about clinicians being employed by the police department or by LA County DMH. Amber, do you want to expand on that?
Sure. Yes. My name is Amber Hunsinger. I am the program director for the Chronic Consumer Stabilization Initiative in Houston. And I was just curious how your clinicians are funded.
So we're funded through LA County Department of Mental Health. So we're budgeted, we're approved by the Board of Supervisors, and we're funded by LA County Department of Mental Health.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I see one or two people
I
have
have a
come up.
question for the group.
Go ahead, Matt.
How many of y'all have a co-responder program up and running in your city,
Probably the vast majority, I would think, right?
but nothing in the realm of case management? Part of my career here included leaving. So I left the large LAPD unit back in 2015, and I was the clinician for 2 smaller cities. I'm not good with population or numbers. One was 8.5 miles, the other was about 4.8 miles. So in that microcosm of each city, the calls for service for mental health, like all group behavior, they followed a pattern. So in each of those cities, I was able to see there was a high utilizer. There was a homeless person that was maybe causing traffic problems. There was several residences where they had their identified juvenile delinquents. There was the town drunk. I mean, it was pretty fascinating to see that. I've already experienced it on a large level in Los Angeles, but then to go and work 2 days in one city and 2 at the other, I was able to generalize and assist both of those separate officers in 2 different cities with expanding their, we're not just to show up and put somebody on a whole team. We could also serve as a function for identifying prohibited possessors in a geographical area of the city. One of my partners began to develop a database for that. So, and he would grab a patrol unit and go on a follow-up and try to retrieve an outstanding firearm. So it was pretty fascinating to see, but so I can appreciate what you and the smaller cities are going through, and I'm totally available for consultation. You can get my email address from Ethan. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I have some experience with that. So I could also speak to that.
Okay. I saw a hand go up earlier. Allie McNay, not sure if that was on accident or not. Was there a question, Allie?
I think she was saying that she has a co-response. To me, that was like I think.
Got it. Okay. Well, Lorena Mitchell, we've got a question in the chat. Lorena, would you mind coming off mute, or shall I read it from the chat? I'm going to go from the chat. You can talk over me if you need to, Lorena. Okay, so the question is, how do you raise public awareness about your co-response service model and just build trust within the communities that you're serving? Do you facilitate community discussions in schools, businesses? Do you reach out to local organizations? How are you informing the community that camp exists as a resource that they can take advantage of?
So we don't actively reach out, camp doesn't, because we want to be able to control which cases we're taking, because we want to be able to add value to the ones that we think that we can help. So we don't actively advertise, but our SMART team, in fact, does, and they reach out through the National Association of Mental, is it NAMI? Mental illness? Yeah, mental illness. So NAMI is a great resource for them. They do a lot of follow-up. We have a senior lead officer program for us. So a senior lead officer program for us, what we do is, since we're a big city, we try to make like the neighborhood cop. So there's a neighborhood cop for every little small neighborhood. Well, each bureaus, and we're broken up into 4 bureaus, has a senior lead officer, so that that officer is in charge of reaching out to both our patrol partners as well as our community partners in helping them with their mental health issues and longer term kind of issues too. So they do a lot of the outreach. They do a lot of the education for both our patrol officers as well as our community members.
Also, I think Dr. Musgrove spoke to, hinted at the importance of relationships with neighboring and other entities that we work with, hospitals, different programs in and out of the LA County Department of Mental Health. Stellar clinician that he is, I'll get a random email or a phone call from a program saying, hey, can you guys give a presentation on what you can do? So we will be giving virtual and in-person presentations, at least educating those people in those different entities, what we do, what we can't do, and sometimes take referrals for them. We've gotten calls from the USC threat assessment program for a person that came up on their radar because it was workplace violence. They assaulted staff. That's what that is. We know that, yeah. And so we don't advertise per se, but we do and will provide an educational presentation, take questions like we're doing now. I think our new program manager has some ideas about getting our name out in the public, but that's just a guess on my part.
But we also have a very robust presence through LA County. So LA County is the overarching sort of entity, and then Department of Mental Health. Department of Mental Health really promotes through public service announcements, emails, newspaper ads, radio. It's very big on radio right now about what is our 3? It's not 911, it's 988.
988.
So we rolled out a 988 number, which
It's a national.
is national.
Yeah.
Okay. So that really, I mean, I don't know how other cities and communities are able to do that, but that 988 here in LA goes through an unbelievable amount of services and filters where people are assessing on the phone the level of acuity and where it could go. And we work with contract agencies that their clinicians may be doing overtime, taking suicide calls, or and that was because it was shuffled there because it was not an active suicide threat. If it's an active suicide threat, that phone system determines where, which agency it's going to go to, which little city or borough that it's going to be addressed by. So it's amazing how large Department of Mental Health is out here, and how we work with contractors, and we continually expand. After seeing the backlash of the effect of COVID isolation on our school kids, DMH is really expanding opportunities for kids to have access to mental health services regardless. As long as they're in LA County, they're eligible. They just have to go through some hoops in order to find a provider.
I have another question, if that's okay. Does your unit collaborate with other investigative units? I'm thinking mostly, like, what I have in mind is domestic violence or human trafficking. I'm always surprised when I look at our co-response just incidents, how many of them involve domestic violence. And I know that in our kind of Mass and Cass area, there was a lot of overlap between mental health, homelessness, substance use, and human trafficking. So I'm just curious if you do kind of collaborate on those type of cases together a lot.
We do. I mean, we get a lot of referrals from our ACU, our Abuse Children's Unit, and whichever cases that come our way. So we do collaborate with different units in LAPD. Just to kind of elaborate more, LA County Department of Mental Health actually have partnerships with 23 different law enforcement teams. So any given day, we could be running about 88 teams in all of counties. This is not including LA County Psychiatric Mobile Response Team, the therapeutic transport teams. We got our after-hour teams. We have our alternative crisis response teams. So there are a lot of teams that we're collaborating with, and Department of Children and Family Services, Adult Protective Services. So these are all agencies that we collaborate with daily. So it works.
Thank you for coming back in.
Yeah, and also too, it's about educating our detectives, because as detectives, even just at our patrol divisions or major crimes, or all these various specialized units that we have, they do call us, because if there is a mental health crisis or a mental health aspect to it, yeah, then we could potentially help out, and that we do quite a bit. In fact, Liz's team, Detective Reyes's team, is putting together an MHIT specifically for detectives. So hopefully we can get the word out that way, because that's really going to be, there's going to be a lot of people. We're not at a shortage for cases at all, because it's just, honestly, there's so many things going on out there right now.
Thank you.
I got a question from Paul here. Has this model spread into any of the surrounding counties in California? Have other people picked up the camp model and kind of emulated it?
Yeah, like Bach was talking about, we have there's at least 23 other police departments in the other cities in Southern California that aren't covered by LAPD. The county has its camp program called RAMP. It kind of ripped off of us. So the risk assessment management program would be the county team that would respond to calls in the sheriff's jurisdiction or in the LA County proper, where the small police department couldn't help it. So in short, yes, it's spread. We're definitely trying to make the model more accessible and more known, and that's why we're doing stuff like this. But yeah, that's why I spoke to the smaller departments, is you're kind of going to be a one-stop shop for all. You'll be the crisis and the follow-up together. Yeah.
And so that's actually good, because LA County, the sheriff's department here, yeah, they do have the RAMP team that is kind of modeled after us, but yeah, they have a great program, and they're county-wide, so that's great. They have a great program there. And I want to say Glendale has a team as well. There's a lot of small cities that have very similar type programs.
Our newest program right now is Beverly Hills. So that's how small that is.
What was that, Bach?
Beverly Hills is our newest on that team.
One-stop shop.
So they just picked up one of their clinicians. So that's our newest partnership.
Excellent.
But a lot of times, during MHIT, again, as a training site, MHIT has people coming from all over the U.S. We have people coming internationally. And one of the things that will be frustrating for some of the law enforcement entities that come is, we want to do this, but we're in an area that doesn't have a DMH. So we encourage them to be creative. I'm always one of the things as a clinician that I know is a big challenge when you are pursuing your career is getting the hours that you need for licensure. And so that's why I'm always encouraging smaller communities. If you don't have a county funded mental health service, and my job is funded through LA County, but then LA County is funded through multiple financial streams, including our state medical billing system, like right, MHSA. So not every state has access to something like that. So we just encourage people, like, you're going to have to knock your heads together and really find out what you can construct in your area. And I'm always trying to point people, go and make relationships with the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level training programs that are within a 50-mile radius, because that could be a wonderful source of clinicians coming right from there looking for employment.
I got a direct question that says, I read on the MEU website that camp started in 2005. What growing pains, if any, have you gone through since then?
Happy?
Well, my growing pain was I left the co-response unit as a supervisor on March 3rd of 2020 to come to the camp unit. And then the world turned upside down about 12 days later. So it was a challenge to be with the unit through the pandemic and the resultant societal upheaval of that time. It has gone through several permutations. When I first got here, I didn't know what it was. I got here in 2007. I think the main focus, the main challenge right now is staffing, as with everybody. I think that Scott was here before me, might be able to talk to some of the other issues that were encountered, but mostly it's just getting a handle on the cases and how can we add value to them and in what ways, because we have so many programs that are coming out that are actually in existence and being created as we speak, that sometimes we're replicating services. So sometimes we really want to do is reach out to the other teams or other resources and see how they can assist us, or vice versa. So I can't put my finger on any one specific thing other than staffing right now.
Okay.
But I know Dr. Musgrove can speak to a couple.
Well, I don't feel like, and I've been here just under 8 years, and I don't necessarily see any growing pains. I see expansion. Certainly COVID kicked us all in the ass. And we had to manage and group. And I work with an amazing group of people that we made constant adjustments. We were pivoting right and left, and we made it work. But I will speak on behalf of a colleague of mine who retired last year, a really, really dear friend who is a long-term psychiatric nurse. And if any of you have ever had the pleasure of working with psychiatric nurses, they are hard ass. They are the real deal. Like, they are just some of the best clinicians you'll ever work with because of their experience. And her name is Maureen, and she'd be fine with telling me this, sharing this with you. But Maureen was the first clinician in 2005 when camp started. And it was not easy for her because it was a new program. She knew what she was there to do, but nobody was there trying to create, making making a safe place for both law enforcement and clinicians to come together and figure it out. They were just literally kind of thrown. And the learning curve and the behavior curve on both the parts of the clinicians and law enforcement, it was not easy at first. There was a ton of conflict. There were a lot of tears. There were, and Maureen was very open with me. She's like, she did her swan song with our agency, very happy, very fulfilled, and was a very accomplished clinician. She did a lot of great for the community. But she shared that her first 2 years here, she cried on a regular basis just because no one was there working diligently to foster communication between the two disciplines. And that's something that now I think we all take for granted because we're all on the same page. Everybody's on the same page. In fact, don't want to necessarily completely speak for law enforcement, But law enforcement doesn't come to our teams unless they know that they've got a vibe for it or that it's a suitable position. In fact, they'll self-select out. My first couple of years here, there would be detectives that came into camp and they would be pivoting out within a month. Like, yeah, this is not the job for me, because it does take, an ability to communicate. You have to be able to communicate with an even wider spectrum of individuals than you have to as a normal beat cop. It just takes the requirements of what you have to do are so much higher. But that was a big growing pain at the beginning of the program. And I to brag for us, I think that we really, really accomplished a great deal in the years since its inception.
And then for the law enforcement side, working with clinicians, it's completely different. I mean, it's just completely different. I don't even know how to describe it sometimes because.
You can be honest.
Well, I annoy the hell out of him on a regular basis, so there's that.
Well, yeah, granted, but so you have to keep in mind that the type of jobs that we are doing are so completely different. So the type of skill set and the type of mindset that you have to have is absolutely almost sometimes 180 polar end, and that's great for a lot of things. Now, yes, it does cause some friction, yes, but also when you're looking at a case and you're discussing things, you're discussing them from completely different points of view, which is absolutely great. And it's very helpful as long as you're willing to listen. So I think that the key is you have to always think about it from their perspective, because they have to go in treating people that are doing things that are completely, they know are not in their best interest, or just self-harming, or just they have to keep walking into that treatment room and with the understanding that they're going to help this person. So, I mean, that's just not our perspective, but it is theirs, which is great. I mean, we need people like that. God bless them. But in the end, you have to you have to be able to listen to each other. It's like like any other personalized relationship that you have with somebody else. We come with completely different skill sets. So I would say that growing pains, and I think that the things that you have to kind of work through, and I know that our sheriff's department was working through that too, is clinicians come at things so completely different, but it's great because you have that different perspective. So until you get it, I don't know. Until you get it, you just don't get it. So I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I would say that not every clinician is cut out for this type of work, this type of collaborative work. And I would say also the same for law enforcement, that not every law enforcement is cut out, and that's okay. Everybody has their journey and their skill set that can be so vital in whatever silo you're in. But this co-responder model requires an ability to be curious and be open and communicative on both parts. And I speak on behalf of clinicians. I've worked with some clinicians that were incredibly rigid and unwilling to look at the bigger picture that actually serves our ethical and moral standards as clinicians. We have to take a step back and look at the big picture.
Well, see, right now he's speaking clinician, right? So for our law enforcement partners out there, when he says rigid, right? Well, obviously you follow the rules, you follow the law. Well, I mean, that is exactly what we do. So when they say rigid, well, he's kind of talking about us. So in the end, like that's the things that you have to kind of get past and kind of work through, because there is, yes, there is a law, but what we're really trying to do is stop the constant breaking of the law. So how do we do that? And we have to really be, as they say, we can't be rigid about it, right? So we do have to get on each other's pages, and there is a growing pain there. There is difference. But it's great, honestly, because these guys have like tons of expertise in things that we have no idea about. But we come with a lot of great legal stuff that we can do that they couldn't touch. And so the synergy there that's the key.
It's great. That's great. And I see one of our other favorite folks, Ann McLeod, has her hand up from Houston.
And
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann McLeod from Houston. Houston is also a learning site, so I want to invite anyone who wants to come see our programs to come. One of the things I did want to reiterate, and Mike mentioned this earlier, is all of this is scalable. We have a program very similar in Houston. And when our program started back in 2009, these individuals that we're talking about giving services to, the community is going to take care of them. They're going to go emergency rooms, they're going to get services. There's already money being spent on them. So I just wanted to remind everybody that these people are in your community, your resources are already being provided to them, money is being spent on them. So what we did was we determined how much money was being spent by each police call, each service call, each hospital admission, each jail admission. We were able to come up with a dollar amount, go before our city council, reallocate that money. And it was a small amount of money compared to what our budget is now. I think it was like $300,000. We had National Alliance for Mental Illness and our Mental Health America advocates with us to determine, could we set aside this amount of money that we're spending on emergency services and transfer it over to this program with our law enforcement collaborators and our behavioral health providers? And it was a pilot. They did it. It was successful. So for those of you who are thinking about funding and how you can get money to implement a program like this, you can start small. You can start with one person, but those are the ways that we initially were able to put a dollar amount on the money that we were asking for. It wasn't just an arbitrary or ambiguous amount. We actually had a specific amount of money that we were already spending on them. So that's all. I just wanted to share that.
Right, and Ann's right. We did exactly the same kind of thing for us too, to try and justify it. So it's great, and we know Ann and Rebecca from Houston. They have a great program too.
Absolutely. Well, we got a little under 10 minutes left. Folks, if you do have questions, feel free to come off mute or drop them in the chat. I have two questions for the LAPD folks. Number one, this is pretty straightforward. Are your detectives on overtime? And then the second, could you talk a little bit about your interactions with veterans and any collaboration that you have with the VA? And what kind of resources are being utilized there?
Yeah, so no, they're actually assigned to us specifically. So we this is their full-time duty where they're assigned to our area. So are they working on overtime? No, a lot of you guys have, and I saw some comments in the chat, the Connect and Protect grant. So we're working with Ethan on a Connect and Protect grant. So there is some overtime that we're working there. And for that, what we're choosing to do with that is to try and use this to do more outreach. So to do more of like what Houston does, which is take, a little bit more personal interest in some of our highest utilizers and try to reach them with a little bit more than just like, hey, we've connected them to resources. Now we're trying to actually meet with them and have more continued contact with people and see if that increases the success rate. So yeah, I guess to answer the question, no, it's a main duty. There is some overtime, but it's not too much. I forget the second part. What was the second part there?
Vets.
Oh, the vets.
And collaborations with them.
Yeah, so we have a VA here in Los Angeles. So they have so many teams and outreach teams that we absolutely work with. And it's great working with those guys because a peer advocate is like the best way to reach some of our veterans. So yeah, absolutely. We meet with them and we collaborate with them all the time. And a lot of our officers, as a lot of your officers are vets as well. So like that's absolutely, we have a lot of collaboration with vets and the VA specifically. So, and DMH has vet centered programs as well. So yeah, we're blessed out here. Some of the people that come and visit our location, I mean, they don't even have like a mental health like law that we can take people to the hospital forcefully. And I couldn't imagine working in a system like that. So I don't know how you guys do it in areas like that. So hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Ernie's not shy, so he'll follow up if he's
let me follow up. No, so I'm actually impressed to hear that the VA has outreach teams because that's very unusual across the nation. We're going to be doing some work and putting out some content on working with specialized populations to include those with TBI, IDD in the VA, and veterans. So I'm curious to kind of see what the workload is there, and wondering, is it most of the resources that are being requested are for like ID recovery in order to even help them start off with getting services. So I was just curious about that.
Well, can we talk about the different, because it's amazing how many different VA programs. There's our VA out here has its own mental evaluation team. So there's VMET, and that is VA funded. And then we have VPAN, which is our mental health clinicians from DMH that are veterans and chose to come to work and do field outreach. And then, so we have VMET, VPAN, and then what is the other one? There's another
VASH.
Our VASH, which is VASH is ostensibly supposed to be specifically for providing housing to veterans, but because it's staffed by social workers, it does a much broader range of services. So yeah, it's amazing if we can just get them to agree to services. Unfortunately, we have a lot, it's a challenge. We have and then in the non-veteran population, we have veterans that are paranoid or that they don't want services, and they themselves are on that merry-go-round of hospitalization and release into the community.
All right. So we've got just a couple of minutes left. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm just going to see, does anybody want to come off mute, ask one or two final questions before we wrap up for the day?
How are you guys doing with the flooding?
It seems to have dried up now, but we're going to get hit with another wave.
Yeah.
So, well, this next wave is when you'll start hearing about all the houses sliding down the hills. That's it's house sliding season.
We're at 60 degrees. It's sunny and beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think it's really hit anybody too hard yet, surprisingly. So
Good.
the
sensationalism of the news.
Oh, I know it was. We were waiting for we did have the gloom, but we didn't have any doom. So it wasn't so bad.
Okay, well.
Could I just say one thing? It's not really a question. I'm sitting here quietly, but I just want you to know how much I'm enjoying this and just all the information, and the wheels are just turning in my head. I'm a case manager at a DOC, but we have a reentry program, and I feel like a lot of the things that you're talking about, we're making these great leaps with communicating with public defenders and prosecutors, and trying to connect so that we can work better to have individuals come in with us maybe for our 3-month program and maybe go to drug court or go to another program. The hardest part for us is that we don't have resources. There's like a 3 to 4 month wait for mental health. So we have people incarcerated, and you're trying to find a place for them to go. Veterans, we have, we can connect them to the VA, and there is a person that comes into our facility, but so much of it is just lack of resources. We do have, of course, 988, so people can utilize that crisis intervention, but we're a population of about 50,000 in Carroll County, and geographically very spread out, very rural. So, but the wheels are turning, and I'm wondering if there are other agencies, other PDs and stuff around that are looking at things like this, because it would make so much sense with all the communication we do between our facility and local departments, and the sheriff's department and things like that, to kind of reduce that recidivism. So there are some really good attorneys, public defenders that I feel like we communicate a lot with, that seem to be doing a lot of their own case management stuff with people to try to place them more appropriately than just PR to programs. So, but it's challenging, to say the least.
we experience the same problem. It's a lack of beds. So as soon as a bed is available, all of a sudden now this person qualifies. So without the beds, like we had an individual who was so impaired that he was literally losing his legs to diabetes, and I mean, he was going to the hospital every other day, and he was costing the system millions and millions of dollars. There's like mental health plus physical ailments, just the two of them, it's nearly impossible to treat. So we need beds too. So in California, where there's a new proposition, they're gonna raise taxes again. I think they're gonna do another bond thing and try to increase. Proposition 1, where they're gonna try and increase the number of beds. Well, how are we gonna staff them? I don't know. We're having the same issues that you guys all are.
Yeah, our mental health clinician is, she's here from the local mental health clinic. Sorry, I got the automatic lights. And she's here 3 days a week. So, she's supporting the medical department, but then we're trying to also cater to so many people that could use it in here that just, aren't getting that because of lack of resources. We do the best we can, but there's only so much that you can do. But this is really, exciting. I mean, it's very optimistic to hear that. And is that grant that people were referring to, is that for law enforcement agencies, the Protect, and I kind of jotted it down.
Karen, I can message you about that.
Okay.
It is called the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, JMHCP.
Okay.
There are two kind of streams there. There's JMHCP, and then there's JMHCP Connect and Protect, which is law enforcement centric. Carly Ceylon, my trusty project manager, just put the link in the chat for you if you want to learn a little bit more about it. And yeah, there's JMHCP is every year, so there's always a solicitation if you want to go and take a look at that and put together a proposal.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And we are at time, and I want to be respectful to everybody, especially our presenters. Thank you, everybody in LA, both on screen and off screen, because I know Bach and Liz are there as well. Thank you so much for sharing about your program, for being generous with your time and answering these questions. As a reminder to everybody here, LAPD is a law enforcement mental health learning site. So if you have questions, don't be shy. You can follow up with them. You can find their contact information in the link that I provided to the Learning Site program in the chat. And the video recording of today's session is going to be posted on the CSG Justice Center YouTube channel just as soon as we get the video processed. So thank you all for being here. Looking forward to having you on future sessions of Ask the Expert. And again, thank you so much. Tons of gratitude for our team in LA. Really appreciate you, and hope everybody has an excellent day and an excellent rest of your week.